This is not history. This is happening right now. May 2026. The ceasefire that was supposed to end 70 days of war is collapsing in real time. And in its place, something far more dangerous has appeared.
I would say it's one of the weakest right now. It's on life support.
Both Washington and Tehran have rejected the terms on a potential peace deal, with threats of resuming the war.
Any American interference in the Strait of Hormuz will be considered a violation of the ceasefire. He went on to say the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf will not be managed by President Trump's delusional posts.
A weapon that America's most advanced missile defense systems were not designed to stop. Iran deployed the Fatah-2 hypersonic missile for the first time in combat, launching it against U.S. military bases in the region after American forces struck Iranian facilities, with the Soufan Center confirming Iran was reportedly deploying for the first time the advanced hypersonic missile Fatah-2 while continuing strikes on U.S. military bases in the region. First time in live combat, a weapon Iran held in reserve for exactly this moment, when interceptor stocks were depleted, when the ceasefire was crumbling, and when America was distracted by peace negotiations. And while Iran fires its most advanced hypersonic weapon, America is simultaneously rushing a hypersonic weapon of its own to the battlefield, one so unproven that the Pentagon's own testing office says it will not have enough data to evaluate its combat effectiveness until early 2027. 2 hypersonic missiles, a ceasefire both sides are violating while pretending to negotiate through it, and a world that just went on high alert because nobody, not Washington, not Tehran, not any capital between them, knows what happens next. Before we reveal exactly what the Fatah-2 is and why its post-boost propulsion motor firing inside the re-entry vehicle makes it fundamentally different from every missile the US-Israeli defense network was built to intercept, why Iran held the Fatah series in reserve during the opening 70 days, deliberately expending older, cheaper missiles first to drain interceptor magazines before deploying its best weapon, what CENTCOM's Dark Eagle request reveals about how badly America's existing strike weapons have been outmaneuvered by Iran, moving its launchers beyond the 500-kilometer range of the precision strike missile, why the Pentagon's own testing office warns Dark Eagle may not be combat ready, and what deploying an unproven hypersonic weapon in a live war means for the next miscalculation, what happened when 3 U.S. Navy destroyers transited Hormuz under fire on May 7th and Trump threatened one big glow coming out of Iran, while diplomats were simultaneously writing a peace memorandum, and why 3 confirmed American fatalities marks the moment this conflict crossed a line it cannot uncross. Subscribe right now and hit that bell, because what Iran just unleashed is the weapon it has been saving since February 28th, held back until every other arrow was fired and the moment was perfect. That moment is now. We connect it right now. Here is what the Fatah-2 actually is, and why it breaks the interception math of every defense system in the region. Iran has 2 Fatah variants. The world focused on the Fatah-1 during the opening weeks. What Iran just deployed is the Fatah-2, and the distinction matters enormously. The Fatah-1 features a first stage derived from the K-Bar Shekan solid fuel booster, and a second element that is not a conventional second stage, but a solid fuel post-boost propulsion motor located inside the re-entry vehicle itself. Firing after the main booster has burned out and the re-entry vehicle has separated, giving the warhead independent maneuvering capability at terminal phase. Inside the re-entry vehicle, the motor fires after separation. Radar systems tracking the missile's ballistic arc cannot predict where the warhead will actually go, because after the booster separates, the warhead changes direction autonomously. You are not intercepting a missile. You are intercepting a maneuvering warhead that just changed its mind about where it is going, at hypersonic speed, with seconds of warning time remaining. Iran's state television claimed the Fatah missiles have successfully penetrated the Israeli regime's defenses, with state TV reporting the weapons can outrun and outmaneuver Western defense systems. The Fatah missiles have a claimed maximum range of 1,400 to 1,500 kilometers, sufficient to strike any location in Israel and target American military bases across the entire Arabian Peninsula, every U.S. base in the Gulf, every Israeli city, all within range of a weapon that maneuvers after separation at speeds that compress the available intercept window to seconds. The Institute for the Study of War assessed that the Fatah series was being held in reserve during Epic Fury's high-volume opening phase, consistent with the pattern of expending older and more expendable systems first, and preserving the most capable rounds for later phases when the ballistic missile defense architecture would be under greater stress from depleted interceptor inventories, held in reserve, deliberately, Iran fired 500 older ballistic missiles first, 2,000 drones, Shahd swarms, cluster munition warheads, all of it designed not just to cause damage, but to drain Arrow, David's Sling, THAAD, and Patriot magazines down to critical levels. And then, when interceptor stocks hit their lowest point, Iran reached for the Fateh II. That is not improvisation. That is a pre-war strategy executed across 70 days with mechanical precision. Here is what America is deploying in response, and why a weapon the Pentagon admits is not ready for combat is being rushed to a live battlefield. America's problem became visible the moment Iran moved its launchers. CENTCOM submitted a formal request for forces for the Army's Dark Eagle hypersonic missile, justifying the move by saying Iran has relocated its ballistic missile launchers beyond the range of the precision strike missile, which can hit targets at more than 483 kilometers, beyond range. Iran watched where America's missiles were coming from and moved its launchers far enough to be outside the strike envelope of the weapons America was actually using. CENTCOM needs a longer arm. Dark Eagle is designed to travel at hypersonic speeds while maneuvering in flight, potentially exceeding 1,700 miles in range, making it particularly suited for targeting mobile or hardened systems such as missile launchers that are difficult to reach with existing weapons. Mobile launchers, exactly what Iran moved out of range. But here is the problem nobody wants to say out loud. Dark Eagle is running far behind schedule and has not been declared fully operational, even as Russia and China have deployed their own hypersonic versions. And although it completed some successful tests in 2024, it repeatedly failed to launch during other tests because of launcher and production quality issues. Repeatedly failed, in controlled tests, with ideal conditions. The Pentagon's own testing office stated it will not have enough data to evaluate Dark Eagle's combat effectiveness until early 2027. Early 2027. Combat effectiveness unknown. CENTCOM wants to fire it against Iran in May 2026. Army Recognition's defense analysts warned that deploying Dark Eagle in the context of a fragile ceasefire could be interpreted as preparation for a resumption of hostilities, and that this dual signal combines strategic pressure and escalation risk simultaneously. Strategic pressure, escalation risk, same deployment decision. Think about what happens if Dark Eagle fails in combat. A hypersonic missile the Pentagon has not certified as ready, fired for the first time in a live war zone, missing its target because of the same launcher and quality issues that caused repeated test failures. That is not just a malfunction. That is a political catastrophe that collapses the negotiation table and gives Iran proof that America's most advanced weapon does not work, worth more than any military target it was sent to destroy. Here is what happened at Hormuz on May 7th, and why ships under fire and a peace deal on the table coexisting in the same 24 hours defines exactly how dangerous this moment is. 3 U.S. Navy guided missile destroyers transited the Strait of Hormuz on May 7, 2026 under direct Iranian fire, absorbing drone attacks, fast attack boat swarms, and missile strikes before American forces destroyed the Iranian attackers, and CENTCOM confirmed strikes on Iranian missile and drone launch sites, command and control locations, and intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance nodes during a ceasefire. Trump called the exchange just a love tap and warned that if Iran does not sign a deal soon, we'll knock them out a lot harder and a lot more violently. Love tap. That is how the president described a combat engagement in which 3 warships were simultaneously attacked with missiles, drones, and fast boats in the world's most critical oil choke point during an active ceasefire. And on that exact same day, the US and Iran were closing in on a 1-page memorandum of understanding that would declare the end of the war and trigger 30 days of further negotiations. Peace deal. Same day. Destroyers under fire and diplomats writing. That is the world on high alert. The Soufan Center confirmed that simultaneously with the Fateh II deployment, Iran attacked the oil carrier Skylight near Hormuz, causing severe damage and beginning to sink the vessel. And CENTCOM confirmed the first American fatalities of the conflict. 3 U.S. service members killed and 5 others wounded in attacks on regional bases. 3 Americans dead, 5 wounded. The first confirmed American fatalities of the entire 70-day war, not from a massive ballistic missile barrage, but from the sustained, patient, targeted campaign Iran has been executing since it stopped firing its big salvos and started firing its best weapons instead. 3 dead Americans while Trump calls the engagement a love tap. That dissonance is the central crisis of May 2026. Here is why the world is on high alert. and why this specific moment is more dangerous than any point in the preceding 70 days. The Soufan Center assessed Iran as pursuing an asymmetric war of attrition focused on exhausting US, Israeli, and allied defensive resources, knowing it cannot win militarily, but believing it can survive by raising the economic, operational, and political costs until the other side blinks. Survive, not win. Iran's strategy was never to defeat America militarily. It was to survive long enough, draining interceptors, breaking supply chains, killing American service members, until Washington's political will collapsed. And Iran is firing the Fatah II at exactly the moment this strategy has its best chance of working. Interceptor stocks critically low. Peace talks at maximum fragility. American poll numbers for the war at historic lows. Dark Eagle unproven, 3 Americans dead. Hormuz still not open. The Fatah II deployment follows Iran's combat debut of the Fatah I in earlier strikes, with Iran's state TV reporting the missiles successfully penetrated Israeli defenses and Iranian IRGC commanders, announcing the weapon had been used in live combat operations for the first time, representing what the Global Times described as Iran raising the stakes, with a system designed to outrun and outmaneuver Western defenses. Raising the stakes. At the exact moment stakes can least afford to be raised. Meanwhile, more than 40 nations have assembled to reopen Hormuz, with France deploying the Charles de Gaulle carrier, Germany sending a mine-sweeping vessel to the Mediterranean, and the coalition waiting for a ceasefire that keeps breaking down every 48 hours. 40 nations, waiting, while hypersonic missiles fly through the truce. One thing is absolutely certain. Iran deployed the Fatah II hypersonic missile in combat for the first time in May 2026. A weapon deliberately held in reserve for 70 days for this exact moment. The Fatah II's post-boost propulsion motor fires inside the separated re-entry vehicle, making its terminal trajectory unpredictable and defeating standard ballistic intercept geometry. CENTCOM formally requested Dark Eagle hypersonic missile deployment because Iran moved its launchers beyond the 500-kilometer range of America's precision strike missile. The Pentagon's testing office confirmed it cannot evaluate Dark Eagle's combat effectiveness until early 2027. 3 U.S. destroyers were attacked simultaneously in Hormuz on May 7th under a nominally active ceasefire. 3 American service members were killed and 5 wounded, the first confirmed U.S. fatalities of the entire conflict. Iran simultaneously attacked and began sinking the oil carrier Skylight near Hormuz. Trump called the combat exchange a love tap and threatened one big glow coming out of Iran on the same day diplomats were writing a peace memorandum. 40 nations are assembled to reopen Hormuz, and Iran's parliament speaker confirmed Iran will not extend the ceasefire unless it retains sovereignty over the strait. So here is what happens next. Iran held the Fatah II for 70 days. It burned through America's interceptors methodically, trading old missiles for new ones until the magazines ran low. Then it fired the weapon that maneuvers after separation. The weapon that arrives at Mach 13. The weapon that Arrow and THAAD were not specifically calibrated to defeat. And America's answer is a hypersonic missile that repeatedly failed to launch in tests and whose combat effectiveness the Pentagon cannot confirm for another year. The ceasefire is holding in name only. 3 Americans are dead. The one-page memorandum is one miscalculation away from becoming irrelevant. And somewhere on a truck-mounted launcher that moved beyond the range of American precision strikes, Iran's IRGC commanders are waiting to see whether the love tap becomes the big glow, or whether the memorandum gets signed before it does. Stay tuned.